Greetings, fellow viewers. It's fantastic to have you all back at Manhwa Station. If you've missed any previous episodes of our gripping tale, don't worry, simply click on the card above to catch up. For those of you who have been following the story, join me as we delve even deeper into the thrilling narrative. I'd also like to take a moment to express my gratitude to all of you who have been supporting me and my channel. Without your encouragement, it would be impossible for me to continue making these recap videos. To show your support, you can become a member of our community by clicking on the join button next to the subscribe button. Your support would mean the world to me. So without further ado, let's continue our journey together into the fascinating world of our story. Don't forget to check out the playlist link in the video description to keep up with every exciting episode. Previously, the story ended when Kevin made the difficult decision to demonstrate his true worth to young Master Roman by cutting off his own hand. After this, the focus of the story shifts to Chris, who is confused about Roman's sudden departure for a week of training while he decided to follow. Roman's sudden move leaves Chris questioning his own decision. Eventually, Chris meets Hans and asks for Roman's whereabouts, but Hans informs him that Roman is currently engaged in a private conversation with Kevin and no one is allowed to enter the room. Chris becomes even more confused when he hears Kevin scream in pain and faints on the ground. In this scene, Roman appears heartless and cruel, but what could be the reason behind his actions? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Later on, Hans is shocked when he sees the bloody sword and realizes what has happened. However, Roman tells Hans not to worry as long as the blood on the sword does not belong to him. Roman then explains that he used his power, known as the charm of the illusion demon, to create an illusion that made it seem like Kevin cut off his hand. In reality, Roman had actually slightly cut Kevin's hand himself before the illusion took effect, in order to reduce the amount of blood lost. Roman thinks about Kevin's bravery and strength, knowing that if the illusion had not worked, Kevin could have lost his hand. The following day, Roman begins teaching Kevin the mana enhancement technique in the palace workshop, knowing that they only have 6 months until the war. Roman warns Kevin about the dangers of the technique, explaining that it was kept in the main house treasury and used by the mad demon he had mentioned before. The technique, called the Soul Spirit God technique, consumes the soul of the user, allowing them to wield extraordinary power even in the face of immense pain. Despite the risks, Roman realizes that Kevin is capable of learning the technique. As Roman explains the potential of the technique to Kevin, he notices that Kevin is more interested in him than the technique itself. Suddenly, Kevin asks Roman why he trusts him so much, knowing that he is just a commoner. He even wonders if he might betray Roman after learning the technique. Roman considers Kevin's question and starts to answer, but then decides to put it off and asks Kevin to get some rest before their next session. In his mind, Roman recalls how the mad demon had asked him a similar question in the Moron world. Roman warns Kevin not to sabotage or betray him, as he will face the full wrath of the heavenly demon. Roman leaves with a devilish glint in his eye and a smirk on his face, leaving Kevin to contemplate the weight of Roman's words. The next morning, Roman begins Kevin's training for the upcoming war, focusing on helping him develop his mana sensing abilities. While Kevin and Roman are immersed in their training, Chris sits by, growing increasingly bored and frustrated with just watching. Chris wonders why only Kevin is getting the training, while he has to sit idle. He can't comprehend why Roman, whom he calls Chad, is teaching swordsmanship to a stranger like Kevin and not giving him any attention. Chris explains how he had believed that following Roman would make him more powerful, but now he feels like Roman doesn't even acknowledge his existence. He contemplates the idea of rejoining the knights and practicing his swordsmanship again. Days pass, and Chris patiently waits for his turn to receive training from Roman, but it seems to never come. Next, it bothers Chris to just wait for his turn, so he stands up and marches to Master Roman. He complains to Roman that he has been waiting for his turn for the past 2 weeks to get stronger. Chris further complains that he trained himself for the whole first week and since then he has just been watching Roman train his favorite Kevin, keeping him on the sidelines to observe. He tells Roman that if he is behaving rudely to him because of his own rudeness before, then he should apologize. Chris pleads with Roman to teach him something too, as he can learn anything with confidence. However, Roman is not amused by Chris's complaint. He tells Chris that he already instructed him to just observe and learn. What's so hard to understand about that? Roman walks away from Chris, stating that everyone has their own way of learning, and everyone is built differently. Roman calmly tells Chris that Kevin is not aware of any fighting techniques, so he will teach him personally until he is fully prepared for war. On the other hand, Chris is just different. No matter what he teaches him, he will just forcefully memorize it. In short, he needs to learn on his own. Annoyed at getting the same answer from Roman, Chris asks if he needs to continue just observing them. Roman denies it and throws Chris a wooden sword to train with. Shocked by the wooden sword, Chris asks Roman why he needs to train with it, as he is a skilled knight. Roman tells him that he will see why. In response to Chris's complaint, Roman tells Chris to have a sparring fight with Kevin, who is just a beginner. When both of them are shocked, Roman tells Chris that no matter his opponent is just a beginner, he will guide him to fight like Master Roman himself is fighting against Chris, like a copy of him. And if Chris thinks that he is correct after the fight, then Roman will personally train him in his demon techniques. After getting sacrificed between two stronger men, Kevin fearfully asks Roman how he expects a novice like him to fight a knight. On the other hand, Chris clenches his teeth in extreme anger, feeling that Roman is taking him for granted. However, determined to show his true worth as a prodigy and not just a pushover, Chris accepts the challenge, and the spar between novice Kevin and prodigy Chris begins. Kevin still feels afraid and asks Roman if sparring with a 2-star knight is too much for a novice. Roman reassures Kevin that he knows he is at a disadvantage, but he will not lose anything from the spar, rather he will benefit. Roman tries to instill some confidence and anger in Kevin by reminding him of stronger people like Bloodfang who have ruined his family through violence. Roman gets angry at Chris and asks him if he is just going to sit silently when someone oppresses him. Fired up by Master Roman's fiery and truthful words, Kevin feels the urge to fight against 2-star knight Chris. However, seeing Kevin's confidence, Chris gets even angrier at both Roman for considering him lower than a novice and Kevin for feeling superior to him, thinking he might win against him. Chris doesn't hold back, even if Kevin is a newbie, and moves towards him with full strength. Filled with overconfidence, Chris strikes Kevin with his wooden sword, pushing it with all his might, thinking how can a newbie like Kevin defeat him. With a single powerful strike, Chris flicks Kevin, not holding back. Kevin falls to the ground, taking a hard hit from the 2-star knight Chris. As the fight commences, Roman reminds Kevin to be prepared with his sword in order to defend against any surprise attacks. Just as Roman had warned, Chris launches a surprise attack at Kevin at the beginning of the fight. However, Kevin doesn't disappoint Roman and successfully blocks the surprise attack with all his might. Roman then instructs Kevin to move aside and strike Chris's chest when the opportunity arises. Even as he falls from a hard hit, Kevin does his best to follow his master's guidance. Despite his efforts, Kevin fails to defend against a stronger attack from Chris and falls to the ground. Undaunted, Roman encourages Kevin to stand back up and not give up. It is then that Kevin realizes that the voice in his head guiding him throughout the fight is none other than his master, Roman. Roman teaches Kevin a technique called sound conduction, which enables them to communicate using mana power without making a sound. Kevin is amazed that such a technique is even possible with the power of mana. At that moment, Roman urges Kevin to prepare himself and give it his all. This time, Kevin successfully dodges Chris's attack, leaving Chris in shock. At that crucial moment, Master Roman instructs Kevin to step back and deliver a direct hit to Chris's left chest. With newfound confidence, Kevin follows his master's instructions and throws Chris on the defensive. However, Chris proves to be a formidable opponent and manages to create a gap for his next attack by catching Kevin off guard. Kevin, now in pain, wonders if he had made a slow swing that caused him to miss the right opening. Chad once again comes to Kevin's aid and instructs him to block the incoming attack from Chris. Thanks to Roman's guidance, Kevin successfully evades another attack from Chris. However, his slow response time leaves him vulnerable and Chris lands a direct knee to his face, causing Kevin to fall to his back with a thud. While Kevin berates himself for his poor performance, Chris surprisingly praises him for holding his own against a seasoned opponent. Roman understands that Kevin still has a long way to go before he can match Chris's skill level, as he is not yet able to respond effectively to his master's commands. Suddenly, something surprises Roman as he watches Kevin stand back up, even after being beaten by Chris. Amused, Roman can sense that Kevin is beginning to understand the essence of the fight. Kevin realizes that Chris has been following Roman's assumptions all along. He criticizes his own body for its slow response time to Roman's ultimate instructions. However, Kevin is amused as he realizes that Roman is not controlling him but instead controlling Chris like a toy, predicting all his next moves. Despite taking another straight hit to the face due to his mistiming of Roman's commands, Kevin does not give up and continues to listen to his master's instructions to save himself. Chris becomes confused as Kevin avoids all of his critical attacks, even after Chris tries his best to strike him down. Chris still thinks that this might all be a coincidence. Meanwhile, Kevin realizes the true skills of his master, Chad Roman, thinking that even the greatest genius, Dimitri Knight, cannot hold a candle to young Master Roman. Kevin praises Roman and pledges to himself to serve him like a god, blindly following his lord's commands. He even prepares to become Roman's sword with his stronger unique willpower. However, Kevin's condition worsens as Chris warns him that if he insists on fighting with his worn-out body, he must be prepared to sacrifice one of his body parts. Kevin's laughter in response to Chris's warning and overconfidence amuses both Chris and Roman. Roman is further entertained as he sees the growing demon inside Kevin, not willing to give up despite being beaten down. Kevin stands up again with overwhelming willpower, determined to fight until the end. Chris, however, is infuriated by Kevin's audacity and intent to kill him. He moves straight towards Kevin, taunting him about his deformed arm that he plans to inflict upon him. Kevin, under Roman's guidance, launches a hard swing with all his might to take Chris down. Though Chris manages to avoid the attack, Kevin's direct and aggressive approach catches him off guard and clenches his anger. Roman, now in a moment of anger, guides Kevin to move around and take a direct attack at an opening in Chris's defense. Kevin moves with his remaining strength, and Chris, frustrated with Kevin's slow attacks, falls into Roman's trap, thinking he has given Kevin a clear opening. However, Chris fails to realize that it's a false opening created by Roman. Kevin strikes with all his might, but Chris manages to dodge at the last moment, narrowly avoiding the attack. The fight becomes even more heated as Kevin, fueled by his growing determination and guided by Roman, continues to press on, trying to find a way to defeat Chris. Lastly, having nothing left to defeat Kevin, Chris employs his special aura to attack him, bringing the spar fight to an end. After declaring Chris the clear winner, Roman approaches the defeated Kevin and offers him personal training if he desires. Roman leaves the decision to Chris and accompanies Kevin to receive medical attention. Later, in his room, Chris feels foolish for fighting Kevin and realizes that he not only wasted his time but also lost in the end. The last move made by Kevin haunts him, as he realizes he made the same mistake when fighting the Chad Roman himself. Chris even considers that without his previous spar experience with Roman, he may not have defeated Kevin without his aura. Ultimately, Chris chuckles at his foolishness, understanding what Roman meant by observing them as he gained power from just one experience. The following day, Roman asks Chris if he wants to train or not. To his surprise, Chris declines the offer and instead accepts to learn by following Roman's lead. Chris believes that he has become stronger just by sparring with Kevin, as Kevin effectively countered each of his critical hits. Chris even commends Roman for seeming to toy with him while actually instructing him and teaching Kevin at the same time. Hearing this, Chris praises Roman as a great leader with a superior realm than even Captain Jonathan. Chris now understands what Roman meant by observing him and is filled with stronger motivation, pledging to follow Roman until he surpasses him. Roman feels happy with this decision and continues to train Kevin in the Heavenly Sword technique. A week passes, and it is now the day of the Barco's social gathering party. Before proceeding directly to the gathering, let us take a moment to review the events that occurred beforehand. Approximately 1 week prior to the gathering, several individuals were discussing the broken marriage of Roman Dimitri and Flora Lawrence. It is widely believed that the Lawrence family was responsible for the dissolution of the marriage due to their failure to properly scrutinize the intellectual capacity of Roman Dimitri. Many feel that Roman is a greater fool than the rumors suggest, as it is highly unexpected for an engagement to end so abruptly in the midst of an impending war. In contrast, some maids have been spreading rumors that Roman, despite his perceived foolishness, managed to defeat the vicious blood of Fang. However, one maid dismisses this claim as mere propaganda concocted by the Demetris in an attempt to cover up their embarrassing disengagement. During the gathering, the son of Viscount Barco, Anthony Barco, inquires of the waiter whether Roman will be in attendance as per the invitation. The waiter confirms that they have indeed received the participation letter from the Demetris. Anthony, a man of lavish lifestyle and attitude, appears to be eagerly anticipating the party. Returning to the day of the gathering, Roman wears a thoughtful expression as he questions Hans about the necessity of donning a fancy royal party attire. Hans, who takes great care of Roman and has provided him with appropriate attire for his first official gathering, shares a wealth of information that Chad appears uninterested in. Sadly, Hans senses that Roman may not wear the attire he has selected and resorts to emotional blackmail, gazing intently into Roman's eyes until he finally succumbs to wearing it, having been won over by Hans' endearing persuasion. As the scene shifts, a fully armored Chris becomes increasingly bored waiting for Kevin to arrive for their departure. When Gold Kevin finally apologizes for his tardiness, explaining that he is still not fully prepared for a larger armor, Chris sighs at his foolishness for wearing armor that is too big for his body. Despite feeling annoyed by Kevin's lack of common sense, Chris takes the opportunity to impart some important information to him. He informs Kevin that they will be serving as the Royal Liege's escorts and will also be representing the Demetris. Chris cautions Kevin against making any forbidden mistakes, and Kevin readily assures him that he fully understands the importance of not doing anything to tarnish the family's reputation. Kevin then flatters Chris by addressing him as Sir Knight. Upon arriving at the party palace, a great deal of rich and luxurious food is being served while the high-headed guests are flaunting their wealth. The ladies present are avoiding each other while displaying their queenly attitudes. Once again, people are talking about Roman's shameless attendance at the Barco's party after breaking off his engagement with Flora Lawrence, even though the Barcos were the first to propose the marriage to Flora. Even the women present continue to refer to him as a moron. All the wealthy young men are discussing Roman, and when one woman asks what kind of man he is, a man disrespects Chad by calling him a moron with no visible status. Meanwhile, the morons themselves are making fun of the legend. Suddenly, an old man announces the arrival of the eldest son of the Dmitri family. As Chad Roman moves through the room with his beautiful aura, it leaves the mouths of his detractors hanging open in disbelief. Their opinions are completely reversed when they witness the heavenly transformation in the stature of the moron. Some even refuse to believe that it is possible. As everyone is in shock, a beautiful lady named Sophia of the Grisel family introduces herself to Roman. Believing that Roman would not have heard of her family, Sophia explains how her father, Baron Grisel, dedicates everything to the kingdom of Cairo, despite their family not being prominent. To her surprise, Roman tells her that he is fully aware of the Grisel family's existence, explaining that he could not possibly be unaware of a family with a history dating back centuries. Getting back to his sudden knowledge secret before the party, Hans asks why he wants to know all the history of families. Roman, being a true representative of the Dmitri family, feels bad for not knowing anything, so he makes an effort to learn the names of the families present and their legacies to show courtesy as a royal. Roman throws a bunch of information about the Grisel family in the northeast, including their high-quality, famous lumber in the Cairo kingdom. He even tells Sophia that he knows her siblings successfully since Mana. Sophia is left with a lot of gratitude and cannot help but admire Master Roman. Seeing Sophia's engaging conversation with Roman Dmitri, other people also start introducing themselves to him, but he already knows their legacies, leaving them in shock that a moron could be so knowledgeable. As the party goes on, people start getting lured to our sensible Roman. He leaves no chance to show his courtesy by greeting them nicely. Even the haters start apologizing to him for mistakenly thinking of him as a drunk moron. Roman makes a prestigious joke about drinking, filling the room with his charisma. The long chit-chat is disturbed by the old man, who tells Roman that Anthony Barco wants to meet him in his room. On the other hand, outside the palace, innocent Kevin asks Chris what a social party really is. But Chris tells him, "What will you do from knowing if you won't attend it ever?" Kevin's crooked helmet annoys Chris repeatedly, and other escorts start looking at Chris, taking them for granted. Chris, annoyed by Kevin's crooked helmet, tells him to take it off. Suddenly, a night escort starts making fun of Roman as a stupid moron of the Dmitri family and also mocks Kevin as an escort who can't even handle a sword. After Kevin gets bothered by them, Chris smartly tells him to just ignore them. But it starts to get on Kevin's nerves when the escort begins to demean the Dmitri family. Meanwhile, at the party, Roman is keenly observing someone, a beautiful lady who is engrossed in a conversation with her friend. However, his focus is abruptly disrupted by the sudden arrival of Anthony Barco, who jokes around with him like a friend. Anthony tries to tease Roman to make sure he doesn't know about the blonde lady he was staring at. The woman he was looking at is none other than Flora Lawrence, the flower of the Lawrence family. Roman is taken aback to discover her identity. The scene then shifts to Roman entering Anthony's room, where he is welcomed by his friend who makes jokes about Roman's appearance. Anthony is unable to comprehend the drastic change in Roman's looks. Nevertheless, Roman remains unfazed and uses his sharp instincts to survey the room, realizing that people were there before him. He suspects that everyone was asked to leave before he arrived to divulge some secret to him. In an attempt to make Anthony feel more comfortable, Roman engages him in casual and friendly conversation. He mentions his sudden transformation due to his wealth and how he continues to change despite not undergoing any training. Roman greets Anthony warmly and expresses his gratitude for seeing him again. Anthony is shocked, unable to reconcile Roman's current friendly demeanor with their past history. As they cheer with their glasses of wine, Roman inquires about what had happened before. Anthony reveals his past, recounting how he had finalized his marriage with Flora Lawrence, but was caught sleeping with his cousin in the back room. Anthony proposes to Roman that if his offer of marriage with Dmitri family's Roman is accepted, he will keep this scandalous secret hidden. The situation becomes more interesting as Anthony brings up the proposal of marriage between the Roman of Dmitri family and the Barco family. Roman finds it intriguing because the old Roman, whom Anthony refers to as Moron Roman, had also wanted to make amends with the Barcos despite being married to Flora. Anthony and his cousin, Emily Barco, had greeted Moron Roman and offered him drinks at a party. Anthony had coerced Emily to pour a drink for Moron Roman, possibly to entice him, but to everyone's surprise, Moron Roman had refused, insisting on pouring his own drink. Shamefaced about his impending marriage with Flora Lawrence, Moron Roman had nervously discussed the proposal with Anthony. However, Anthony had reassured him not to worry, as the Barcos were no longer bothered by the Lawrences. A sense of relief had washed over Moron Roman, and Anthony had sweet-talked him into drinking the wine. Being the gullible Moron Roman, he had consumed the wine without hesitation and had suddenly passed out. Later, Roman wakes up, his head pounding from the effects of the drug. As he looks around, he realizes that he is naked in the bedroom. Being a moron, he cannot comprehend what is happening or what is expected of him. Suddenly, someone shouts at him. Filled with anger, Anthony berates Roman for his grave mistake. Roman tries to defend himself, but he cannot prove his point as he finds himself lying naked beside Emily Barco. To cover up his tracks, he claims that he doesn't remember anything. Anthony seizes this opportunity to lure Roman into a bigger trap by warning him that this mistake of sleeping with a Barco lady could lead to a war, and he cannot let the matter slide. To save Roman from his demise, Anthony presents him with two choices. Either he exposes Roman and disengages him from Flora Lawrence, or Roman marries a direct descendant of the Barco family to pay for his mistake. Anthony warns Roman that if he chooses to become a man of Barco, then he must accept the consequences, and that Anthony will only forgive him for laying his hands on his cousin if he becomes a part of the Barco family. Moron Roman trembles as he is given such a forced choice, even though he didn't do anything wrong. Anthony insists that Roman make a decision. In the present, Roman finally learns the details of what really happened that led Moron to become a drunken drug addict. Roman realizes that if Moron's making out with Emily Barco is exposed, it would shatter Dimitri's honor, as they are already being criticized for their common origin. Roman understands Moron's situation, as Moron might not have had the confidence to face his father's anger or Vincent Lawrence's wrath, because he truly loved Flora. Roman realizes that Moron didn't want to break his marriage with his love and defame her. However, with no other options left, Moron took his own life, thinking that his death would solve the matter. Heavenly Demon identifies Roman as a weak man with no backbone. Chad Roman feels miserable and pathetic because of his old moron self. On the other hand, Anthony keeps pressuring Roman to accept the Barco marriage proposal, as it would strengthen both families in the Northeast. Anthony believes that if Barco and Dimitri come together, no one will be able to oppose them. Anthony tries his best to please the Heavenly Demon, but he is shocked when Roman tells him that he only wants to marry for power. Roman gets annoyed at Anthony, wondering how Anthony could expect him to marry for such a pathetic reason. Anthony reveals his true nature by angrily telling Roman that he is unfit to make decisions. He even threatens to expose Roman's shameful actions with his cousin and tarnish Dimitri's reputation if he refuses. But just when Anthony thought he had the upper hand, Chad Roman puts a stop to his bluff by slamming his leg on the table. Roman fiercely declares that Dimitri doesn't need to marry into the Barco family for such a pathetic reason. As Roman returns to the palace, he's greeted by Sophia Giselle, who wonders where he's been. Despite her attempts to keep him at the party, Roman insists he has something important to attend to. Ignoring the protests of others, he takes his leave. Suddenly, Roman hears Kevin's voice screaming in distress. Rushing to investigate, he's shocked to find Kevin being brutally beaten by knights. What will happen to those soldiers for laying their hands on Kevin? Will this lead a war between the Barcos and the Dimitris? To know, tune in for the next episode of this epic manhwa. With that, I will take some rest because of high fever. Comment down the word chat if you want part 7 of this manhwa recap. Before going, I want you all to please like the video and subscribe to the Manhwa station. Also, turn bell notifications on to get notified when I drop the next recap. Wait. Guys, I have a humble request. If anyone wants to support me in this work, as I don't earn anything from YouTube yet, I want some support from you guys. If you want to support, you can join the channel and become a member to enjoy exclusive perks and get to watch the next recap a day before its release. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.